Here's one. I mentioned a certain issue on a recent episode of the Echo short stories, and it reflects in this question from Inugami the Hound. Do you have any solutions to help fix some of the bad tropes for mostly the female characters in furry visual novel games?
Oh God, yes! Oh, this is I'm so happy to get into this one.
Yes.
Oh my gosh!
I brought it up, and in an episode, it was the short story where it was I don't know if everyone's played the short stories for Echo, but it was where they played out the scene in Echo where they prank they prank Leo, and Leo breaks Chase's phone.
Mm-hmm.
And then Chase says that he's going to Pueblo because it was Jenna and Chase pranking Leo. But Jenna just comes across as the most unlikable, unsympathetic, cannot read the fucking room kind of.
I'm so glad that somebody else said it.
Yeah. And this also was a short story that came after another short story where it was heavily hinted that she was deliberately going to try to take Chase away from Leo in the same story, where she was making jokes at the expense of the fact that Chase and Leo were having relationship issues, which he was clearly uncomfortable about. And I'm like, you don't have to write her like that. You don't have to write the only female in the main cast like that. And then you look at other visual novels where you get either almost no involvement in the plot, no explanation for why they're this stoic, nice mother character, or their characteristics are bitch, and that's about it. So passing this off or down the line, how would each person fix, this is the question, how would each person fix some of the bad writing or characterizations for certain that's a different question. Some solutions to fix some of the bad tropes for mostly female characters in furry VN games. Fallenwolf, start with you.
Oh, wow, you're going to start with me? Okay, I thought you were going to save me for last. Okay, I'm ready though.
Well, if you want to go last, I can start with someone else. If you want.
I kind of want to hear everybody's opinion because I'm just curious.
Blaidd Llwyd, let's start with you.
Of course, you and Fallen have a much better perspective on this than I do. So I'm definitely interested to hear from Fallen myself as to what she thinks. I think one thing to be aware of is a kind of a background. Don't just, we need a character with this, and this goes for any character, particularly in this situation. Why is someone like this? Don't just, like you mentioned, don't just have them, they're this very nice person, fine. Well, we could, even if we don't hear too much, just a bit of a background. Think about it when you're writing. Try and figure out, where do they come from? What are their influences? Is this how they are? Do they act like this particular way? And just trying to think of, think of all the women you know in your own personal life. Because we all know a lot of them, some more than others. Just trying to think of what they are like as characters. Try to imagine a character like them and get away from the tropes. Just think of, for lack of a better term, an ordinary person. And just try and work something with that. It is something I have to be aware of because I'm doing some writing on something myself. And I'm aware that I don't always write the best female characters myself. So I am trying to work on that. And I think something like that helps. Try to think, who do I know? Not say, this person is this person in my real life. That never works well. Just think of some types of people and that kind of thing. Just bring some aspects of them in. Maybe that might help with the tropes. I don't know, but it's the first thing I would suggest anyway.
I agree. Character motivation's at the heart of any kind of characters to do. Why and what do they want? Why are they doing any sort of thing?
I'm not a writer myself, but I think one thing that might help, get more input or get in the writing room, just more female writers. I reach out to some people and have them put their input, and I don't know. I'm not really a writer, and oh gosh, I'll never claim to be. So
I understand your method, though. Diversification of the writing atmosphere.
if you have it all as a bros club, you're never really gonna have input from the female point of view.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that's my 2 cents. Sorry.
I'm trying to keep that in mind because it relates to what I want to say, because I remember that, so I'm gonna try to remember that.
It's a good point. Very good point.
Oh, that's some good.
Dirk the Red Panda, what are your good points?
Oh boy, are they good? Who knows?
Fucking better be.
No, there's no knife being held next to me.
You have a female in Ocean Avenue, and I thought she was pretty well done.
That's also something I worry about sometimes. Where it's like, am I writing this right? But I guess to kind of start off and elaborate, Blaidd and Marshmallow both had really good inputs to bounce off of, because it's really important to give them like a background, a reason why they're there. Not that they're just, here's reason. They're just here to be this, an asshole, a bitch, or just the stoic whoever. Like that's very one-dimensional. They obviously need the dimensionality, but also, you also need to have women in the room to help show how this is how women can be more normally, or this is a more realistic depiction of a woman. Have like when you write a character based off of yourself, or talk to another person to help write maybe somebody that isn't much like you from a different background, race, culture, etc. But to go on to my own unique points, I'd say it's like, I think the problem is, when you're talking about furry visual novels, it's definitely a thing that's notable in a gay furry visual novel scene. It seems like the trope of that is more so being written in a sense where the romantic plot is male loving male. And so as a result of that, women are more pushed to the side of that. They're more of the kind of background character of that. They're more usually a side character, even if they're in the main cast. And so let me just wrap back to it, because I think I kind of lost some of it when I mentioned some of the other points. But I would say the important thing of writing a character is just making sure when you write them, just make sure that they are, a person of them. Think about that, maybe in a sense, even though they may be a different gender, sex, etc. than you, it's like you want to write them as if they are somebody that you would see in real life, somebody that is going to be around you. Think of them as a person, and would they hang out with you? What would they do? What would be their favorite thing to do? Hobbies, kind of like in a way that you'd write any other guy. Even if you're not going to date them or do anything beyond with them, it's important that, in a sense, either they're a friend or they're somebody else's friend. Just making sure they're very real. They're somebody that is, very, at least has an interestingness to them, a dimensionality. I guess, that's how I kind of write Selma in Ocean Avenue, is that they have their hobbies, they have their interests, even if they, transcend just being gender exclusive or whatnot. It's important to see that there's a reason why this character is friends with these guys, and this is why maybe she's doing stuff with her own women friends and whatnot too. It's just, I guess it's the same way you develop any other guy or any other character. It's you want to think of people in the same way as no matter what gender, it's you gotta also, in a sense, make them feel real. Sorry if I really looped around in circles on that one.
No, you're absolutely right. I don't remember who said it, but I think it was a writer that said, how do you write full, well-rounded characters for females? And I was like, well, I write full, well-rounded characters, and that's it. I don't think about
exactly
whether they're female or not. And you also briefly touched on something that was it happens a lot in stories that are so focused on male / male love stories, and then women get pushed aside or used for specific roles in the stories and not thought of as characters. And sometimes their women are thought of as almost antagonists because they're seen as like the opposition.
That are props in a sense where it's
Well,
just like they're just there to be there.
And that even goes as far back as that goes as far back as like fairy tales. It was always like evil stepmothers.
Yeah, there is, and I'm not specifically saying for any specific story here, but there is an unfortunate trend in some in a thin layer cast through the genre of male/male stories in some sects, sects, of viewing the female involvement in a misogynistic manner, where they're seen as unnecessary or as antagonists or as tools, but not as characters, not as useful. You'll see them prop up as means to an end, or as plot devices, or as villains for an arc, but that's about it. They'll be one note. They'll be the crazy one, or they'll be the one who shows up for a line, and it's not really been addressed for I don't know where else, but I'm not saying if I've not seen it, then that doesn't mean it hasn't been, but I've not seen it addressed in this sphere. But quite frankly, I'm sick of it. There are a lot of games that I've played, games that I've viewed, where the only female character I see is just the bratty bitch, or the mom who inexplicably loves everyone and is tolerant of everything, and also they're never going to show up anywhere that is important to the plot.
It's like that bratty type is like kind of the I can keep up with the guys trope.
Yeah,
it's like they gotta be there to be just like the guys, rather than she has her own personality beyond doing stuff with guys.
Yeah.
She can offer her own unique input, but still has relations with the friends.
And I don't think highly of limiting critique down to a simple stereotype, but it genuinely seems like they're writing from a perspective of never having actually met or had a genuine conversation with a real female before. Like, that is a very harsh stereotype, and I don't mean it genuinely, but it's what it sounds like. It's what it feels like, because these are all stereotypes from like TV or media, or from stereotypes that exist in one's mind. Like, do you feel like that's all that women do? Because that's all that you're writing. Like, from game to game, there are exceptions. There are huge exceptions. Like you said, in Ocean's Avenue, your game, there's characters with their own hobbies, their own motivations, their own thing. And there are other games that do have exceptions, but it's getting old. Anyway, I've put it off long enough. We built it up. Here we go. Fallenwolf. Let's get your feedback. How do you fix it?
So I one of the biggest things, I mean, I think a lot of you explained it pretty well, is you need to make them like characters. And one of the biggest I know struggles I've had, and it kind of makes me sad, is I've seen a lot, especially lately, a lot of furry visual novels that have female characters and they're a stereotype, and and I don't always think it's purposeful. Like, I don't think that they're purposely trying to make a female character that's like a stereotype, or trying to make a female character that's like hurtful. But it's always one of it. Most of the time, they're either an ice queen or they're a motherly type. There's never an in between. It's not all the time, but there's a lot of times where I feel like it's one of two tropes. One of those two tropes, and I feel like for the biggest thing, like we said earlier, like Dirk said, you did, Vivian, is you have to make them like characters. And I wanted to add, because Marshmallow mentioned something, I'm going to add on to it. I don't like it because I have brought this up with with a few other furry VN creators in certain servers, I was like, I really wish there was more female characters, more better female representation in furry visual novels. And I had a few people say, well, they're writing it for themselves. That the creators are writing it for themselves, and that they either don't know how to write proper female characters, or that they just don't want to have female characters in their story.
The creators said that?
And
the creators said that they don't want female characters?
There's been a I mean, not even just the creators. I mean, I know fans. I remember there was a big debacle with Morinatsu. People were upset because they added female characters in the revised one that's being worked on right now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
there was people that were upset that they were adding more female characters in it.
They add a comma in that game and people get pissed.
Yeah.
So
I feel so bad for the developers of Morinatsu Revisited.
So anyway, going to the question, you have to make them like characters. I always use this character just because they're the easiest character to think of that everybody recognizes. I like looking at Zuko from Avatar, because that is a character that goes through an immense amount of growth, and you can have, even if you have a character that starts off, maybe not the best, female or otherwise, have them grow. People really love to see characters grow and develop like real people. I mean, that's, real life. People grow and develop. They're not always the same. And I think like another big thing is you can't just look at them as female. You have to be, willing to take feedback. Sometimes too, I think some, in all honesty, I think some furry visual novel creators are afraid to ask females for their advice. To ask, like, what do you think of this? Or, hey, what can I do to improve this character? Or whatever. Or, just give an example. Like, sometimes I do think I think sometimes people are afraid to ask. And my thought is always, the best example I could say is I have a very close friend that's been really nice. They're a recent friend. They know that I'm trans, and they were afraid to ask me questions because they didn't want to offend me. And my answer was like, I'm not going to be offended as long as I know that you are trying to learn. As long as I know that you are trying to genuinely learn, I'm not going to take offense to it. And I feel like that's the same thing with VN creators have to think of when they're asking for input from other fellow females. You have to be willing to ask, and you have to, make it known that you are not trying to offend anybody, not trying to offend somebody. You are trying to learn. So the biggest thing, treat them like characters. Don't treat them like stereotypes, because I think that's a big thing, and it's a predominant thing I see in furry VNs, and frankly, it's kind of sad, because I know me as a furry VN lover, I enjoy reading furry VNs, and that's kind of disheartening to get to these VNs and enjoy them, and then you see the female character like, oh, it's another, you're like, oh, it's another ice queen, or oh, it's another cliche mother type that loves everybody and is only there to defuse tension between characters and do nothing else.
Yeah, well,
so
well put.
Like I said, treat them like characters. I think the biggest thing you got to remember, treat them like characters. You don't, and be willing to ask questions. Like, I know I've told people, like, if you generally want to add a female in your VN and you're unsure, I'm always willing to help people. Like, if people come to me, like, I'll tell them, say, hey, I think you could do this with this character. Hey, I think you could do this with the character. Or, hey, I think this might be a little bit hurtful. Maybe you could change that a little bit. So that's basically it. I think people need to be more willing to add change, and I also think VN creators need to understand that just because you add a female character into a gay furry visual novel does not mean it's automatically not a gay furry visual novel. I think that's another big thing that we have an issue with.
And also,
I think there's a lot of people who are like, oh, if I add a female though, then it's not gay, and it's like, you can still have a gay furry visual novel, just just add a female. It doesn't mean people are not everyone's going to think if you had a female, it's like, oh, they're a romance option. They can just be a side character. There are such things in stories called side characters.
Yeah. Even characters in the main cast where it's like, now everybody's going to be a dating option. It's like, I know there's obviously Also, people are like, oh, I wish this was a dateable character, but yeah, you know, if people do think that, it's just a very narrow-minded thing. I don't know who it is, if anybody is that way, if that's just a straw man, but at the same time, it's like you don't want to add a female character to just be like, ooh, I have a ribbon now. I added a female character. Look at me.
Yeah, that's another thing. That's why
diversity check. That's another topic.
What Vivian went back to too. Don't make them a damn stereotype. Which means to say you can. Oh, that was it. And also the other thing is, just because you make a character the complete opposite of what a stereotype is, doesn't mean they're not still a stereotype. Like, just because I know that sounds so weird. I wish I could word it better. But by that I mean, like, just because you're like, oh, well, add a female, but she's super strong and she's well toned and she's always working out and she's always hanging out with the boys. That's like, that kind of way. That's still a stereotype. Because sometimes I think people try to go like too hard on not being a stereotype, and they still end up having another stereotype. That's another thing you have to be real careful about too.
Yeah, it's like there's no such thing as an anti-stereotype.
Exactly.
Well, you can fill in the blanks of what I'm trying to imply too.
Yeah,
you have to be real careful with that too.